The scriptures were written to bless and encourage us, and surely they do that. But have you noticed that every now and then a passage will appear that reminds us we're falling a little short? For example, the Sermon on the Mount begins with soothing, beautiful, gentle beatitudes. But then in the verses that follow, we're told, among other things, "Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect." Around the church, I hear many struggle with this issue. I'm just not good enough. I fall so far short. I'll never measure up. I hear this from teenagers, from missionaries, from new converts, from lifelong members. Satan has somehow managed to make covenants and commandments seem like curses and condemnations. For some, he has turned the ideals and inspiration of the gospel into self-loathing and misery-making.
We are on the road to perfection. In one of the Lord's first sermons was the injunction to become perfect. "Be ye therefore perfect," he said, "even as your Father in heaven is perfect." Paul indicated that all could attain perfection. The fact that most of us are far from perfection is not that we can't, but that we don't. Let me say then that perfection is still our goal. It is reached by climbing and steadily upward, controlling all our desires, impulses, and urges. It is possible. Remember that the Lord gave us Abraham as an example and quoted him often. Abraham received all things whatsoever he received by revelation and commandment, by my word, saith the Lord, and hath entered into his exaltation, and sitteth upon his throne. This is not a promise, that is a reality. Go ye therefore and do the works of Abraham. As we speak of perfection, there is much to consider. One must be the soul of honor, full of integrity, and above reproach. One must be true to himself, and being thus, he cannot then be false to any man. We have made promises and covenants. Remember that the Lord extended to man his free agency. He told Enoch, "Behold, these thy brethren, they are the workmanship of mine own hands, and I gave unto them their knowledge the day that I created them. And in the Garden of Eden gave I unto man his agency." And then again, "For I, the Lord, have decreed in my heart that inasmuch as any man belonging to the order shall be found a transgressor," or in other words, shall break the covenant with which he has been bound, "he shall be cursed in his life, and shall be trodden down by whom I will. For I, the Lord, am not to be mocked in these things." And so when one breaks the law of the word of wisdom, the law of chastity in any form, the law of the Sabbath, and any others of the laws of the church, he or she violates the covenant made. Certainly a difficult role to play and a difficult goal to attain, but the path has been charted and the way has been found, and man is left without excuse if he does not follow it. Perfection is a long, hard journey with many pitfalls. It's not attainable overnight. Eternal vigilance is the price of victory. Eternal vigilance is required in the subduing of enemies and of becoming the master of oneself. It cannot be accomplished in little spurts and disconnected efforts. There must be constant and valiant, purposeful living, righteous living. Man can transform himself, and he must. Man has in himself the seeds of godhood which can germinate and grow and develop. Like the acorn becomes the oak, the mortal man becomes a god. It is within his power to lift himself by his very bootstraps from the plane on which he finds himself to the plane on which he should be. It may be a long, hard lift, but with many obstacles, but it is a real possibility. As we have stated before, the way to perfection seems to be a changing of one's life, to substitute the good for the evil in every case. Changes can come best if we take one item at a time. For instance, it's not difficult to be perfect in tithe paying, for if one pays 1/10 of his income annually, he is perfect in that respect. It is not difficult to become perfect in the swearing habit, for if he locks his mouth against all words of cursing, he is en route to perfection in that matter. If one studies the scriptures with all reasonable devotion, he has approached perfection in that matter also. To be perfect, then, one must begin early in his life. He or she must become the perfect husband, the perfect wife, the perfect father, the perfect mother, the perfect leader, and the perfect follower. One's marriage must be perfectly performed and perfectly kept on a hallowed plane. One must keep his life circumspect.
Satan has somehow managed to make covenants and commandments seem like curses and condemnations. For some, he has turned the ideals and inspiration of the gospel into self-loathing and misery-making.
Toxic perfectionism comes by holding unrealistically high standards in addition to overvaluing performance. Overvaluation of performance leads to catastrophizing about less than perfect performance and rating oneself based on a single flawed instance. These impulses produce anxiety and depression. These unhealthy negative emotions result from clinging to unattainable standards. These are the predictable and reproducible effects of teaching human perfection found in any high-demand controlling group. They are the result of normal human psychology in the face of unethical, coercive manipulation, not Satan.